continuing on, phase 6, in dealing with the poor and oppression. We're reading scriptures. You have to look at the whole series. I can't go back and explain it all, but primarily I had a vision, and the vision was, in my sleep rather, I dreamed a dream of a volcano, and when I woke up, there was a volcano in Africa. And there has been a volcano erupted in Iceland, and there's been a volcano erupted in Italy. All I'm saying is, oppression, Micah 2:1-2, go back and listen to the tapes, is everywhere. And no man lay it to heart. It's covered. The volcano's quiet until it erupts. So we read Ruth of Boaz, who redeemed the poor of his next of kin and purchased the field and gave it to him, restored land back. David the king said, then I restored what I took not away. He restored to Mephibosheth, showing love and kindness. And his father, Mephibosheth's father, had tried to kill King David. Usually you wipe out the seed. He invited him to come sit at his table and gave him the lands that his father had lost. What if the world operated like that? But it says, by the way, David was a man after God's own heart. David cared about and loved his neighbor in this sense. Even his enemy, King Saul. We won't bless our enemies like the Lord said. We'll destroy them. They become an enemy sometimes because we want what they have. Worldwide. From which cometh wars. You covet, you lust, you cannot have. So we devise schemes. Micah 2, first chapter, second chapter. Okay, let's continue in scripture. Isaiah 2:7. The Lord maketh poor and maketh rich. He bringeth low and lifteth up. Now that was 1 Samuel 2:7. That was an act of promotion. God raises up people that are poor when they came out of Egypt, hoping they would remember that they were strangers in Egypt. So they came before the Lord in Deuteronomy 26 and said, now we were strangers in Egypt, God. We thank you brought us out. We have given our tithe to the Levite, the priest first. Come on now, that's okay. Support your ministers. I'm not trying to destroy that. We need them. But I'm trying to get the church, at least the members there, to consider other members who might be going through things and take resources and help them in their necessities. The wickedness is going to get more wicked. Inflation is going to continue. Rents are going to continue to rise with inflation in food. Your dollar will go down, and we need some Josephs on the scene who was raised up from poverty and slavery to sustain his brothers. So when we get there, do we forget? You didn't get out of suffering to look at somebody suffer and die in his suffering. You were raised up to help the one that's suffering and relieve them in their suffering. You say, brother, that ain't scripture. Okay? I'll read one scripture, Deuteronomy 15:11. That for the poor shall not cease out the land. They're going to be there. Therefore I command you, command, saying, thou shalt open thy hand wide unto thy poor, to thy brother, and to thy poor, and to the needy in your land. Beware, Deuteronomy 15:9, lest there be not a thought in thy wicked heart, saying, the seventh year has come, the year of release. That's when you had to help the poor. The seventh year, the year of release is at hand, and thy eye be evil against thy poor brother, and thou givest him not. And he cried to the Lord, it would be sin. See, there's a season to receive, and there's a season to give. Jesus passed by the fig tree and said it wasn't even the season, but because he had a necessity, the tree was created to sustain life. You ever saw green leaves? Not to hang someone on the tree. Let me go on down here and keep it pushing. He raiseth up the poor out of the dust, and lifteth the beggar from the dunghill, to set him among princesses. 1 Samuel 2:8. And to make them inherit the throne of glory, for the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he hath set the world upon them. You know what amazes me is when poor people come out of poverty, especially in African American or African or India or Venezuela or wherever the poor may be, all around the world. Brothers forget where they came from, man, and what the purpose of God is thwarted, because you see more in the lust of your eyes. You want more and more and more, and then we begin to become and choose the oppressor's way. I gave God my 10%, so I don't have to help nobody. I did. I gave him the 10. Try that New Testament. Second Samuel 12:1. The Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him and said, there were 2 men in one city, one rich, one the other poor. And the rich man took what the little poor man had. You better watch yourself, preachers. Be careful. If you're going to do the work of the evangelist and win souls, and there's an objection on the table in the hoods about how we deal with money, I caution you to be extra careful, lest you covet something that they really needed for a necessity, and you go buy a $1,000 pair of alligators. The righteous being sold out for shoes. The politician selling out, looking the other way for power, to sustain the power, and allowing drugs to flood through our borders, knowing it's brought genocide to our inner cities. Be careful. The most abominable thing is to have a person that's been poor in power and he becomes like the oppressor. That's what sent Israel, Michael, 1st chapter, 2nd chapter, into captivity. Book of Amos, Jeremiah, Zephaniah, Isaiah. But the poor man had nothing save one little hour, 2 Samuel 12:3, which he brought and nourished up, and they grew together. And with his children he did eat his own meat, and drank of his own cup, and lay it in his bosom, and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own land, to dress for the wayfaring man that was come unto him, but took the poor man's land. The invasion of Africa, the usury of slavery, the poor Indians, the poor Mexicans, policies with third world countries, the plunder of Africa and leaving them in sheer poverty. For these things come the volcano. And I'm not talking about the physical. The sins are filling up. And the wrath of God is poured out, as we see in the book of Revelation 17, upon the mother of harlots. And the capitalists who capitalize through policy to take the wealth out of the earth and to set their nests on high in their palaces have brought devastation to the earth. The earth is spewing out this kind of practices. You think abortion's bad, try oppression. But the captain of the guard, 2 Kings 25:12. So he took the poor man's thing. He was greedy. He wanted more. I charge him a higher interest rate because he's poor. Yeah, he made mistakes. Oh, you lost your job. Too bad. Well, now your interest rate is this. Oh, the house is going to cost you $180,000. Oh, your interest rate is 6.5 on the first $200,000 of that loan. And on the second loan, it's going to be 7.5 with a cap of 12%. Why did the poor man get charged 80 times more for the car and the house? Developers. Whew. Why did the lady in China, Google it, go on YouTube, and put in the prosperity of China, the raising up of the buildings and the development. Man, they have people, they don't pay them. They just got to go by eminent domain. Eminent domain drove the blacks out of Hidden Head Beach, which is worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. It was black owned. They were forced to leave. I could go on. Greenwood, Austin, Elaine counties, taking what little bit the poor have. And calling yourself a Christian nation? Man, don't you know for them things came the judgment of God? And you're not even the originals. You Europeans here in America. You're not Hebrews. You did worse, or just as they did to their own people. And they went into captivity, but for some reason, because we're Americans in this materialistic society, we got things, the delusion is thinking that the things would deliver us from the coming destructions from the volcano. And I'm not talking about a volcano. The filth, the unclean practices, and not caring what happens, just long as I got mine. See my car? Woo. But took the man's land, trusted for himself. He coveted what that one man had. Jezebel's spirit. I covet what you have. And we see Jezebel in Jude. Baal worship. Baal loved power and greed and fortune, reputation and status. Jezebel killed the man whose inheritance was to go to his family, because when King Ahab wanted to buy it, he wouldn't sell it. It was for his inheritance. Jezebel killed the man. You coveted it to Ahab. What about David, who coveted the man's wife? See, covetousness. Yeah. We hate the manna if it falls in, and you don't have more than what you want. We hate that system. Wonder if there'd be rich or poor in talking physically in heaven. But the captain of the guard, even though Jesus said, as it is in heaven, show it in the earth. If you're my people. 2 Kings 25:12. But the captain of the guard left of the poor of the land to be vine dressers and husbands. So they were taken into captivity. And there you have it. They left the land to be for the poor. Why did God put that in the one that was bringing the judgment for them abusing the poor, using the poor, seizing their land? They seized Jeremiah's land, putting in some dung. That's waste. Because they said we can continue to capitalize and do what we want to do. And God never intended it for the gap between the rich and the poor to be in his people, peculiar people. He didn't want that. He wanted to show the same care. Now, if you have more, that's okay. But your brother can't be in the streets without nothing. You ain't loving your neighbor as yourself. You're loving yourself. That is our culture in America, in the West, and in the East. It's everywhere. What can I get off of you and make my life more comfortable? But the captain of the guard left of the poor the land of the vine dressers. And the Ethiopian went down there and pulled Jeremiah out of that dung. You scholars know I'm telling the truth. And the slaves, the one that had nothing, the scripture says the ones that were used, the king that took him into captivity, I think the king of Babylon left them. Told them you can deal with the land, be blessed. Amazing how God uses things. Let me see. And as in the days whereas the Jews rested from their enemies in the month which was turned into them from sorrow to joy and from mourning into good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy and of sending portions one to another and gifts to the poor. Does your ministry send gifts to the poor? This is Esther 9:22. He that give to the poor lendeth to the Lord. Job 5:15. But he saveth the poor from the sword. This is Job talking. War from their mouth and from the hand of the mighty. Man, all them bodies don't drop because of oppression and people wanted to get rich. Penitentiaries making all kind of money. God help us. Job 5:16. So the poor have hope in iniquity. The iniquity in men's heart have stopped their mouth. I see you and make merchandise out of you, mean nothing to me. Job 20:10. His children shall seek to please the poor, and his hands shall restore their goods. Nicodemus, when he saw Jesus, said, Lord, you coming to my house? Get ready for a visitation at your church house. It's coming over these next 10 years. At some point. Don't be found in the balance and the writing be on the wall. Restore. He said, I'll restore sevenfold, Jesus. He knew. He was part of an oppressive system. Job 12:20-19. Because he have turned, he is oppressed and have forsaken the poor. Because he have violently taken away the house which he built. Micah 2:2. There's your real estate again. You know you bought the house at a tax ID sale. The man been there 20 years. He don't bought the house 15 times over. You put him out. You don't give him a dime to relocate or nothing. Just get out. And who does it? The landlords. So we don't have to deal with scripture. You're not going to read this in your church. This is a capitalist society that promotes however you get it, just get it. They turn the needy, Job 24:4. Out of the way, the poor of the earth hide themselves together. Job 24:9. They pluck the fatherless from the breast and take a pledge of the poor. Wow. Child care support services. Ooh, Jesus. Job 24:14. The murderer rising with the light killeth the poor and the needy, and in the night is as a thief. Coming in, all these wars. I mean, I look at Africa right now, what's going on, bro? Because I've delivered the poor, Job 29:12, that cry. And the fatherless, and him that have no help. Have we done that? Has your church done that? I was a father, Job 29:16. I was a father to the poor, and cause which I knew not, I searched out. This is what Job's confession was. He was wealthy. Job 30:24. Did not I weep for him that was in trouble? The Spirit of God gives you groaning and travail. And we don't groan over it. We live comfortably and just say, give ye, and love gifts. And not deal with reality, not even look at it. Which was not my soul grieved for the poor. Oppression. Job 31:16. If I have withheld from the poor from their desire, or have caused the eyes of the widow to faint. Wow. Evicting the widows. God help us. If I have seen any, Job 31:19, if I have seen any perish for want of clothing, or any poor without covering. Job 34:19, how much less to him that accepteth not the persons of princes, nor regardeth the rich more than the poor. For they all are the work of his hands. Job 34:28, so that they cause the cry of the poor to come unto him, and he heareth the city of the afflicted. And we say we fear God. Job 36:6, he persevereth not the life of the wicked, but giveth right to the poor. Do we help build the wicked system? Do we tell people in Bangladesh going to give me 10% meat so I can preach the gospel, and then leave them without their needs met? Why don't prosperity preachers go over to the countries the most poorest and preach that doctrine. If it don't work worldwide, you might want to check your doctrine. He delivered the poor in his affliction. Who did? 2 Corinthians 8:9. The saints should. This is Job 36:15. And openeth their ears in the oppression. Don't want to hear your problems. But yet you have got rich by their giving. Churches. Psalm 9:18. For the needy shall not always be forgotten. The expectation of the poor shall not perish forever. God was looking for a remnant people that would rise up and help your brother in the hoods and everywhere you find him. You say you're a leader. You say you know the way of prosperity. Educate them, help them, and empower them to help themselves, and then teach them to do the same. The wicked in this pride do persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined. Psalm 10:2. There's Micah 2:2 right there. 1:2. Psalm 10:8. He that sitteth in the lurking places of the villages and the secret places do he murder the innocent. His eyes are probably set against the poor, coveting their fields, coveting their land, coveting their substance, their minerals, their diamonds, their gold, their resources, their aluminum, their core, their iron, their oil. God help us. And so the last three, see, yep, I got enough time to read it. Psalm 10:9. He lieth in wait secretly as a lion in his den. He lieth to wait to catch the poor. He doeth catch the poor when he draweth him into his net. God help us. Loans and foreclosures and high interest rates and repossessions of cars on the last payment. Come on, bro, the list goes on and on. I want the gold. Here, I'll trick you for this. Oh, go pay them 2 cents and I'll pay you $1 million. Psalm 10:10. He croucheth and he humbleth himself that the poor may fall by his strong ones, conquering nations that are poor for the plunder and the resources. And lastly, this goes on and on and on. Psalm 12:5. For the oppression of the poor, for the sighing of the needy, now I will arise, said the Lord. I will set him in safety from him that puffeth them. God cares about these oppressive leaders that make promises, but they not giving nothing back. It's a system of not giving back. Psalm 14:6. You have shamed the counsel of the poor. Psalm 34:6. The poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of his troubles. Psalm 35:10. All my bones shall say, Lord, who is like unto thee, which delivers the poor from him that is too strong for him? Yea, the poor and the needy from him that spoiled him. And I want to say, that is the thing that we're looking at. That lady in China that jumped from that building because they took her land by eminent domain. God help. How many black people own land in this country where they slave? And how many poor people have worked and deserve something like a house, yet they live from check to check, and the rich get richer? And you guys want to call anything that deals with the poor socialist, communist, Marxist thing? Really? With all these scriptures? God puts us to shame, confounding our wisdom, which is earth. Psalm 40:17, last one. But I am poor and needy, yet the Lord thinketh upon me. Thou art my help and my deliverer. Make no tarrying, Lord. So we see that's what we got to do. We have to get busy with the poor. Sharing with the necessities, at least in the household of faith. How's your light going to shine? And we don't even consider these scriptures. We say bring all the tithes into the storehouse, right? But the tithe for the will of the Father and stranger is never mentioned. We're just like the oppressor. We don't have a 2 Corinthians 8:9. We don't have nothing going out. When you do that,
you have the world in the church. And then when you go to rebuke those devils, they don't flee. They take over your neighborhood like the sons of Sceva, who thought they had authority, but in fact, they didn't have any authority. In other words, the enemy will run you over. And Jeremiah 23 and Hooks, I give you the last word.